At the crossroads of great change, we are faced with a need for great resolve. To challenge the challenging, to build a resilient world for tomorrow. And while we remain rooted to the realities of our communities, today the systems we create, the conversations we hold, actively question these realities and make space for change. Because for a billion Indians to thrive, we must relook at our realities as fluid, our potential for change as flexible and interconnected. So this year, we are coming together to embrace that potential of transforming communities through a convergence of perspectives and continued action that rebuilds the future with resilience.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone. But welcome to the 13th edition of Dasra Philanthropy Week. While the last decade has given us great reason to celebrate our economic progress, the devastating pandemic has forced us to confront our current reality. There are two stark realities: becoming one of the world's fastest growing major economies called India, and the other called Bharat, where 400 million realities have become the largest number of extreme poor globally. With this backdrop and the fresh wounds of the COVID war, this year's forum focuses on continuity, community, and conversion, sharing learnings for collaborative actions for greater continuity, keeping communities at the center and forcing convergence towards inclusive, scalable solutions, accelerating Dasra's vision, a transformed India where a billion thrive with dignity and equity. Dasra's work is guided by a strong belief in prioritizing the lives of vulnerable communities, trusting and respecting the wisdom of local, homegrown nonprofits, and leveraging the power of trust-based networks to build social capital with a JEDI lens. JEDI, gender, equity, diversity, and inclusion. With the intent to keep communities at the center of everything, our contribution was enriched through the 15 Dasra giving circles that enabled us to engage with over 275 diverse funders, over 800 NGOs, strengthening the capacities of 20 NGOs deeply working with them as their own team members. Over time, this led to establishing deeper focus areas, working with adolescents under the Dasra Adolescent Collaborative, becoming the Secretariat for WASH Partners in India, the NFSSM Alliance, and transforming Indian industry practices to secure better lives for informal workers, the Social Compact. Since 1999, Dasra has strengthened the social sector talent pipeline with over 350 Dasra alumni, fundraised over $280 million, supported over 1,000 diverse NGOs across the country, and affected the lives of over 90 million Indians. We need a philanthropic revolution and a bold ambition. By 2030, Dasra aims to raise $1 billion and affect over 500 million lives. The last 2 years had us questioning everything: the need of those we serve and the ones who want to serve and serve better. I would love to share 3 key observations as a backdrop for you as you hear more perspectives this evening from our trailblazers. First, stress resilience is underrated. From COVID and SCRA amendments, Dasra implemented the Dasra Resilience Toolkit that enabled NGOs to gauge their sustainability in face of stress. 33% showed up in the fight for survival mode, and an additional 14% in high stress zones. Many of these organizations had to lay off their team members, give up their offices, and had to reorient, if not stop their programs. Bottom line, stop serving their communities. What they needed most to survive was flexible funding, was domestic funding, both a continuous stressor in the sector. Second, funders don't listen. While the India Philanthropy Report 2022 calls out the stark reality that India's richest give less than 1%, there is still hope And that hope was demonstrated by many who wanted to listen and understand. What enabled them to do that was having access to a confidant. May that be a nonprofit leader, a phone call with a trusted advisor who could help them give differently, or the umpteen knowledge-rich webinars that were being hosted every week. What many others could have benefited from would have been a peer community, structured philanthropic ecosystem that fosters trust in givers, both which are a work in progress opportunities in the sector. And lastly, relay races are cool. Yes, relay races. And I heard this analogy yesterday by a funder in a conversation around vulnerable children. The relay races first began to carry messages between tribes. Legends were passed from generation to generation and from tribe to tribe. In some cases, when the messages were urgent, two separate messengers were sent in the same direction with the same message. The point that I'm trying to make here is the philanthropic sector needs many players with the same message operating in and from different directions to arrive eventually at the lives we all want to prioritize and serve. We don't have to do everything always together. There is merit in the relay race, and we can pick from where the others stop. This was clearly demonstrated by the sector wonderfully during the COVID period with retail giving platforms, family offices, collaboratives, and intermediaries that catalyze proximate philanthropy. But so much more can be done. With these observations, I invite you this evening. As a backdrop, I would like to invite my 6 trailblazers joining from different walks of life to share their perspectives on how they prioritize life in their own context and their own unique settings. We have the voices of nonprofit leaders, funders, and ecosystem builders, lending their view on magic of capacity building, strategic advice, role of ecosystem, and much more. Think of me this evening as a rotating mic, rather a rotating spotlight on each of them. And I do hope that you walk away with some aha moments. While we won't have any question and answers, but please feel free to post your comments, questions, etc. in the chat box. And we promise that we'll get back to you offline. With that, I would love to invite my first trailblazer, Raj. I hope we have him spotlighted. Welcome, Raj. I know you hate spotlights, but don't be mean. I also know you love spotlights. Raj is co-founder of, I'll let you speak, Raj. Just give me 1 minute to introduce you. So Raj is co-founder of Lender Hand India that prepares youth for employment and entrepreneurship opportunities by working at the intersection of education and livelihood. But Raj, our relationship really goes back to 2010. And Lahi has been on such a tremendously inspiring journey in the last 12 years. I remember you have almost inducted me in the sector, and I can't be enough. I can't be grateful enough for that. But I'd love for you to share with the group today, how has advisory and institution building been central to your growth story as you think about community impact?
Thank you, Megha. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for the spotlight, and thanks for being able to introduce our work to such a large audience. I would say that we can divide Lender Hand's journey almost into 3 stages, and if I can call it, coming from IT background, that starting from beginning of 1.0, when we were part of Dasra's Dasra social impact, the infamous cohort 5 in that, right? The 30 of us, right? In that. That's when we were just getting our journey in the social sector started. And I must say that the 3-pager which we prepared, as an introduction to Lender Hand India's work, 14 years down the line, we are still using it in that. We might have changed some numbers here and there and otherwise, but the same format and same this thing continues. So I cannot really sort of overstate the importance of all the support, which we got at that point in time as we got started. So whether it was a 3-pager profile or whether the 30-second elevator pitch, or whatever you call it, and how we fumbled through that, or understanding the difference between outcomes and output, which actually I still don't know. I must say I keep getting confused between the two, or being able to meet 30 other crazy people like me, in as part of our cohort, right? Because they almost became our sort of support network as we carried out our journey further, right? And I think that was something which was really very, very critical as we were just getting started, right? So that was, you can say, beginning of Lender in India 1.0, Lender in India 1.0. Fast forward, say about 3 to 4 years, as we were moving from retail funding to securing institutional funding. And that is when my pitch, which I made, I still remember that day when we made a pitch to Sir Durabji Tata Trust as part of our graduation ceremony of with the Dasra's cohort. And we secured a funding of 10 lakhs rupees to conduct the impact assessment of our work, right? And I always say that, impact assessment is one thing which everybody wants to do it, but nobody wants to fund it in the first place. So it was very great. In fact, that impact assessment, which got funded by the Ravi Tata Trust, went into sort of, launching the next stage of Lender in India's growth journey in that. As well as our first institutional multi-year, funder was Axis Bank Foundation, where we got a 5-year funding for 100 schools at that point. And guess what? Dasra was one of the reference points. They had called Deval. I still remember Mr. Babu Joseph had called Deval about what is this Lender in India all about, right? And that certainly sort of helped us to get to the institutional funding too. And as around 2013-14, we were looking to pitch to the government what we do and all that. Now, so even to hone that, I mean, as you know, many of we founders have many ideas in our head, and we can speak for like 2 hours about a single thing, like I'm doing, right now. But being able to put it succinctly, being able to put it sort of, on paper, and being able to present it to government official who may not have more than, sort of 2-3 minutes of mind space for you. We really, were benefited by the sort of, being able to visualize, being able to portray and other things too, right? So, so that was like, like a Lender in India 2.0 in that, right? Now come to say 2020-21, and we come to Lender in India 3.0. Of course, now we were looking to scale, the system change, and all the other things which came into play. We got shortlisted by Co-Impact for a design grant. We were one of the 30 organizations which got shortlisted. And we are like, wow, so now we have to prepare a 5-year plan in that. And a 5-year plan which can be understood by others and all that. And that's when, once again, I think this thing, assistance and the working with the Dasra team, which we had, came into a huge sort of, assistance. And once we secured design grant, then we were supposed to develop our 100 crore proposal, which we're like, oh shoot, ye to kar diya, now what, and all that. And I think that's where Anand and Shal and all were part of the wonderful team helped us to get through that as well, and which helped us to secure the system change grant from Co-Impact now, right? So in case you are thinking that this is a walking and talking advertisement for Dasra, you can take like that or whatever, right? It is a fact which I just wanted to share. Now, that has been, in all these things, the reason I wanted to share has helped us to get Lender India where it is today, right? In that. And these are the things, or these are the assistance and other things too, which normally don't get funding in that, right? It is more the programmatic funding. It is more something which is visible. It is more something which has a 1-year outcome, show something which happens in 1 year or so. And otherwise, that's why I just wanted to, walk you through with the journey that Lender in India is sort of, gone through, right? And by the way, Megha just warn me when there's a 1 minute left, okay? Otherwise, I can keep talking for the entire
Raj, I do want you to talk. I do want you to share something interesting that you were talking to me, which is now also the Lahi 3.0 is how you are supporting other smaller organizations who work in the space of livelihood. And so in your own journey, it's about now you transferring and using those principles. Could you talk a little bit to that? Because I found that very amazing.
Sure. So I think, now that Lender in India has achieved certain size, certain track record, we have certain resources and all that. we think that we also should be in the business of CSR for NGOs, right? Why CSR should be, maybe you can call it NSR, non-profit social responsibility or whatever, that word might be. And the approach we have taken, Megha, is that how do we help somebody who was lender in India, say 12 years back, right? At that stage or something like that. So we have been on a informal sort of lookout for such players. Even we are also encouraging actually our own employees to start on their own, because we think that one lender in India is not enough. There are probably hundreds of them needed in various names and otherwise too. So in one of this thing where we are offering our employees that if after working for us for 2 to 3 years, if you want to start on your own, we will protect your salary for half of the salary for 3 years, right? And get them started on what they are doing. Or we have also identified the sort of social entrepreneurs who are into the field for about 2-3 years, who are trying to make it in the similar field that we are, almost taking them under our wings, right? Under our umbrella. That, hey guys, great job. I can introduce you to Government of Delhi, right? Or you need some funding for your tablets for 50 students. Here is your funding, or something like that. Or you're looking for an introduction to some sort of other funder with whom we're already working, and all that. We have done that as well, and we think that of course there are many collaborative forms, and they are needed for the time that we are in. But NGOs like Lend a Hand, can take this approach of, you can say, informal collaborative, right? Or informal incubators, in that sense, because having a collaborative itself has its own sort of, management and other, this thing that we need to add to, and we certainly will get to it at some point. But currently we thought that, this approach can help us to get there. But Megha, again, I wanted to share that we have been able to do all this because our funders have allowed us to undertake such activities, right? In the first place. So funders like JP Morgan, who funded us for 20 schools way back in 2014, now helping us to scale the program to almost 10,000 plus schools by funding our work with the government, right? Where the outcomes and output is pretty much predictable and otherwise. And that's the reason I would say that, policies are very easy to make. It's like almost naam karna bahut aasan hota hai, lekin kaam karna bahut difficult hota hai, right? So when somebody is funding us to work calm with the government, and that's what means, that helps a lot when the outputs are very difficult to sort of tangibly input, right? So anyway, so that's my sort of 2 cents here. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Raj, for sharing that perspective. And I really like the fact that keeping community at the center, it's not just also about your scaling, but now paying it forward by also nurturing these other 3 organizations that you already have in your portfolio, if I may say that. Thank you so much for that, Raj, and I'll see you around in a bit. My next speaker is Ria. Hi, Ria. So Ria, before I even ask my real question, I want to know, what is Mila? And I know the story there.
Yeah, so Mila is the sort of loosely structured entity that encompasses my work in the social sector. But the story behind the name is actually, I think, relevant to our conversation today. Which is, so this sort of happened when I was about 20. I was doing research around gender ratio, the very skewed gender ratio, and I was working in villages in Haryana. I was going around a village with my little survey, and I met this woman, Urmila, who the organization Mila is named after, who was incredibly poor, came from a lower caste, never been to school, victim of repeated domestic abuse at home, had a very, very difficult life. And she was telling me about all of these things about her life in this really matter-of-fact sort of way, because the thing that she was fully focused on was asking me questions. Because her entire purpose in the conversation was trying to figure out how to get her daughter to go to a good college. And that was like the single-minded sort of strength and focus behind her questions to me and the conversation she wanted to have with me. And I left that feeling totally humbled, because while I was not very clear on what I could do to help her at that stage of my life, she was very clear on what she needed. And I think my big takeaway from that was that the importance of learning by listening to people and hearing from them directly what they need is like unparalleled. And I want that to be kind of a principle that I follow as much as possible. So I call the organization Mila so that I just remember that. And then hopefully as much of the work I can do as a homage to her is probably a good sort of rule of thumb.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Ria. When you kind of alluded to it, I thought like you must share this. But I've had a very interesting journey with you and your mom, Rati, right? And Dasra has been privileged to know Rati for last 18 years. And she was one of our torch bearers on the sanitation report that we did, and then the giving circle that came off it. We've been having tons of conversation and a lot about how do we think about personal philanthropy differently? What I'd like for you to share a little bit is you're also now gen, and we're calling we don't say next gen, we say now gen. And you bring in a different kind of energy and perspective, but also a lot of your principles in the way we think in these conversations. I'd love for you to give your perspective to your personal philanthropy. What are some themes? What are some ethos? And how are you nudging, how are you nudging your family? How are you nudging Rati and us differently?
Sure. So I think, yeah, like you said, my mom has been working in the space for decades. I'm new to it. I'm learning, still have lots to learn. But when COVID happened, we had a lot of conversations together, and I think we were both really aligned that we had to act, and we had to act quickly. Based on the situation that we saw around us, which I don't need to rehash for this group, is you were all aware what it was like in March and April 2020. And so we wanted to sort of build a strategy in our personal philanthropy, which was actually quite separate and differentiated from the CSR work that we had been doing up until that point, because we felt that a separate strategy was necessary given what was going on. So we followed, I guess, maybe 3 principles. So one was, we said we really wanted to focus on underserved communities and geographies. So areas that were perhaps being missed by other funders, being missed by the overall, and just really think about, are there tribal communities, are there smaller communities that would otherwise not be completely overlooked in the funding ecosystem. And what that entailed actually was then often finding grassroots organizations that were very well connected with those communities because they understood the specific needs of those communities well. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, of course, like a broader focus on sort of medium to long-term rebuilding. Because while the short-term relief work was, of course, incredibly important and had to happen, we were a little concerned about memories being short and short-term funding getting a lot of focus, and then missing kind of the medium and long-term needs and impact that would happen further down the road. So we tried to keep our funding focused on the medium to long-term work. And then the third thing was, we just decided very early on that, again, like kind of what I was saying earlier, listening to organizations, because they were connected with the need on the ground. They knew what they needed. And so we were very oriented towards unrestricted funding. But even if we were giving small grants, and we weren't giving, huge grants, but even if we were giving small grants, the grants would be unrestricted, and so that the organizations could decide to do what they wanted with it. The second part of your question, in terms of like what have I been doing, in terms of the conversation, I guess maybe 2 things that I'm bringing into the conversation. So one is the sort of obvious one around digital and technology. I think you see a lot of people in our generation sort of helping organizations also think about, using data effectively and those kinds of things. And not as a way of saying technology answers or, solves all problems or anything like that, but just saying, look, if there are opportunities, if there are places where technology can make a difference, that can be a gap that we can help plug quite easily. So that's one. The second thing that's been sort of interesting is that I think I've been focusing a lot of our conversation and work on well-being. And so actually thinking a bit about the leaders of these organizations who've been through an incredibly difficult time over the last couple of years. They do very difficult work in the best of times, and this has been a particularly difficult time for them. So just thinking about their health and well-being, how can we prevent them from burning out? How can we support them to take time and to be the strongest versions of themselves so that they can continue to do this amazing work? Has been just something that we've started to think a little bit more about together. But I'm really happy that we're at least starting to kind of have that conversation and to enable some of the leaders we work with to be open and vulnerable about those kinds of things as well.
No, thank you so much, Ria, and thank you for pushing us. Right, I think my own engagements with both of you, and for you all to constantly ask simple but such valid and relevant questions enables us to go back and bring that kind of information that enables you to make this kind of decisions, but also for being truly champions of deep listening, because every conversation that I have with you all really comes from a place of you care, and that really moving that power in the hands of NGO leaders to say that they know best what they would like to do off the funds. So thank you so much for that perspective, Ria, and I'll see you around. My next trailblazer is Vivek Pawar.
Hi.
Hi, Vivek. So
Hi.
Vivek, your video is off, Vivek. Can you hear us, Vivek, though? Hi, Vivek. Can you hear us, please? Yeah, oh, there you go. There you are.
Sorry. Yeah,
hey, Vivek.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you nice and loud. Vivek, thanks for joining us this evening. And I'm not sure you know that how did Dasra get introduced to Deshpande Foundation? Do you know that little bit? In 2015, actually, we met Deshpande, and he spoke at one of our forums in New York, similar philanthropy forum, and that is when we first got to meet him, and then we got introduced to Deshpande Foundation. And then we had the privilege of working with your team, and then you had recently sort of come on board as the leader of Deshpande Foundation to build out the rural transformation framework. It's been a fantastic journey for Dasra and a learning journey for us. Related to that, Vivek, my question for you today is: where is Deshpande today? Deshpande Foundation today? How are you continuing to work with the community? What are some of the challenges that you're facing, and what are some of your asks of the ecosystem?
Yeah. Thanks. I think it is mega. Thanks for the opportunity to share the work, and a lot of learning we have gone through. I came with 30 years of 25 plus years of a corporate experience. So took over 4 years back, and we were working on mass for masses. So what we said: micro entrepreneurship, agriculture, skilling, and startup. And we had actually kind of 10 programs, and going well. We had impacted 1.5 lakh farmers, maybe a kind of 10,000 students, and maybe kind of around 4,000 micro entrepreneurs. But all this was basically good. But when somebody comes to foundation, they are not able to pick up what Deshpande Foundation does. And we're also kind of struggling to what to be a coherent picture. And thinking through, and we met Dasra, I would say your team. And what we realized was, I think what was missing was an overarching goal that was required, which actually kind of targets all the program, all the kind of goals that we had towards one common goal. That doesn't mean that programs have to change. Program can be same with minor tweaks here and there. Because when we looked at that time, so when we worked with Dasra, we came to realize that our 80% of our work is happening actually on the rural side, villages. Our agriculture is 100% in village. Our micro entrepreneurship is actually rated to 90% village. Our skill in village is 100% village. Our skill plus, which is entrepreneurship, employability,
Hi, is Vivek frozen? I'm a little confused. Okay, I am fine. It seems like Vivek's screen is frozen. Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't I call in my next trail? Jacob, we can't hear him. I think it's his internet. So I'm going to have him join back. Maybe I could, Ashish, maybe I could request you to sort of join me. Yes, thank you. Ashish, thank you for joining us. This is really early morning for you. So thank you for doing this. But again, we've known you for over 5 years, and I know you shared with us that you attended in person the Mumbai Dasra Philanthropy Forum. I'm really keen, Ashish, for you to lend a perspective on what's happening. So you lead, the work at Indiaspora. You engage with the diaspora a lot more. And so with they sitting miles away from what the reality is and how the lives of the communities are impacted, would love to hear a little bit of what do you see them asking you, how does Indiaspora engage with them? What is it that keeps
Sorry, I
you
got
up at night?
disconnected.
Yeah, Vivek, how about we just come back to you in a couple of minutes? Yes, over to you, Ashish.
Yeah, thanks, Megha. Really, first of all, really delighted to be here and with everyone in the panel. Let me, I guess, address this question by first talking about the current state of the diaspora giving ecosystem in the US. So on the supply side, which is donor and philanthropists, we are seeing an incredible amount of energy and enthusiasm across all levels. Whether it is the retail donor, whether it is the HNI, UHNI philanthropist, there is just a greater desire and appetite to give and give more strategically. And I think there are three main reasons for this. Number one is that the diaspora in the US has settled and the wealth has been accumulated. We think of the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s as the accumulation phase, where people were heads down, working hard, trying to be successful, accumulating wealth, bringing their families over. And all of that has now happened. These same people have acquired the wealth, become influential, are looking to engage, are looking to give back. And so we think that this is an incredible opportunity to elevate the level of giving. So that's number one. Number two, I think Indians are acquiring wealth much younger and much faster in the US right now. And number three, the trust deficit barrier is slowly going away. With the increase in the information that is available, with the focus on transparency, there are fewer people asking questions like, will my money make an impact? Will it go to the right people? And so forth. So, as a result of all this, I think we have a great opportunity in the next 5, 10, even 20 years to significantly increase diaspora giving. And given the fact that even now, 68 to 70% of diaspora giving is still going to India, this is huge. This is a huge opportunity for growth for philanthropy in India. And, in the last couple of years, we have seen trends that are very encouraging. Obviously, retail diaspora giving to India has grown. There are a lot more Indian HNIs, UHNIs opening private foundations to structure and professionally handle their philanthropy giving. The Indian signatories at the Gates Giving Pledge continue to grow. The diaspora, the response to the pandemic has been incredibly strong. So several other reasons that signal that we can really achieve significant growth in diaspora giving that is directed to India. So that's just on the supply side. If you look at the demand side, the trends that we are seeing are also very interesting. So because there is increased momentum in diaspora giving, and I'm focusing now just on HNIs and UHNIs, the larger nonprofits like Pratham, AIF, Akshay Patra, and others who have been in the US for many years, and they have built an incredible network and credibility in the US, are very well positioned to capitalize on this momentum, grow their donor pool, absorb the funding, and direct it to their programs. So this is excellent. Also, there is greater donor engagement, we feel, with intermediaries, foundations working on collaboratives, catalytic institutions focused on grassroots efforts in India, which is also very good. I will say that small and medium-sized organizations, though, are still struggling to get in front of a US donor. And we know that there are several of these organizations with proven interventions, ability to scale, but they lack that fundraising muscle and the presence in the US to get the attention of the diaspora. So that is something that we need to work on. But having said all this, overall, I find that the individual engagement with the donor really needs to go up. We need to significantly needs to go up. I just don't think we just need more boots on the ground in the US for donor engagement. And generally Western philanthropists are very conditioned to the idea of philanthropy being sold to them, and we need to do exactly that to the diaspora UHNIs and HNIs. And currently we're just not able to do that. And if we are able to fix that, I think there will be incremental growth in giving, but it'll also make it very focused, very strategic, centered around an issue or a community, and will essentially just result in better outcomes and engagement. In some sense, the pandemic has helped with this focused and strategic approach. A lot of donors from the US, because they wanted to give to support livelihood assistance to migrant communities, COVID care centers, they've found out about organizations like Jan Sahas, Goonj, other organizations like Wish Foundation that provide healthcare delivery in India. And this has only helped them to want to learn more, want to engage more, want to give more. Coming back to your central question of how the ecosystem can enable effective diaspora giving, I think the simple answer is by understanding the stage at which the funder is on his or her philanthropy journey and engaging them based on that. Obviously, this is easier said than done, and will take a lot of collective effort from all of us, funders, organizations, intermediaries, everybody, because approaches will need to be customized, conversations will need to be customized, philanthropy products will need to be customized. But I'll give you a couple of examples. Seasoned funders and folks who are steeped in philanthropy are asking very specific questions. They are looking for greater subject matter expertise and connections in India. Some of them are looking at place-based philanthropy approaches for deeper community engagement, and generally more sophisticated tools to make their giving a little more impactful. On the other hand, if you look at HNIs and UHNIs who are new to philanthropy because they gave for the first time in the pandemic and want to give more, they just had an equity event or a cash event and have money and they want to give to a cause, they need a very different level of engagement, more education and learning around the areas they care about, participation in giving circles, engagement trips to India, and so on. I also do think that we need to do more to make the discovery of and the giving to small and medium-sized organizations easier, because that will only support these incredible organizations, but also broaden the options. Currently in the US, education and health remain the top two diaspora giving areas. And I don't think that is going to change in the near future. But there are more people who want to give to other areas like sanitation, rural livelihood assistance, and so on. And so broadening options will only help. Let me just close this and wrap by just restating that just from a diaspora giving standpoint, I think we are at a very exciting moment. If we play our cards right, we can really double and even more diaspora giving in the next decade. In fact, I feel it is going to be a very big missed opportunity if we are not able to do that, frankly. But for that, we will really need to engage smartly and create giving opportunities across the board and across levels. So that by that I mean retail, HNI, UHNI, and mainly across giving journey spectrum. How do we engage with the new donor, the engaged donor, and the seasoned philanthropist? So let me stop here. I would love to answer any questions that have come up.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful, Ashish. And there's just one question that I see popping is how do these small and medium organizations reach out, right? And link to that a little bit of what is Indiaspora really? What are your priorities, right? How are you looking to operate? Have you all pivoted or not? That would be helpful.
I think the one successful model that we've seen for small and medium-sized organizations is to use their network. There is obviously a very strong founder in India, which is why these organizations are where they are and are ready to scale. Using their peer-to-peer network, creating board members, US board members, connecting with different groups, whether it's the philanthropists, whether it's student bodies, and then eventually, if there is enough funding, hiring a leader that can then work with all these groups that have been created to just elevate the profile of the nonprofit, and then engagement, whether it is engaging the HNIs, UHNIs, retail. I think the most successful strategy that we've seen is by really having presence here And that starts with your friends, your network. Eventually, if you have traction, creating a board and, having professionally staffing it in the US. Retail giving always continues. Retail giving through different channels will continue. But if you really want to, tap into the potential that exists here, I think having boots on the ground and engaging is the best way and the most effective way for continued access.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashish. Thank you for your perspectives, and I will come back to you. Thank you so much. My next trailblazer, Gautami. Gautami, we know you for over 10 years now, and it's really interesting to have a philanthropic champion in Kotak. After many, many years of trying hard, we finally were able to host a roundtable of 12 individuals. And what an eclectic group where Dasra learned, but I was hoping that even the group had learned a little bit about philanthropy. And we truly internally speak that this wouldn't have been possible without a champion such as you and Jyoti really being there in Kotak. So Gautami, my question to you is, what are you hearing? You're managing the wealth of really, really rich folks. Are they talking philanthropy? Are they asking for any value add services from you which is related to philanthropy?
Thanks, Jyoti. Thanks, Megha and Deval and the entire Dasra team for inviting Kotak to speak at this event. See, the aim of Kotak in starting this desk of philanthropy solutions was to engage with the clients, because we saw a lot of queries coming to us that how do we give, whom do we give, how do we set up the organization? And we said, okay, it's very important. And we started this almost 5 years back, and we see a lot of traction happening since last 2 years, since the pandemic came in. And we have come across a lot of UHNI and HNI clients wanting to give back to the society. And I agree with what Ashish said. There was a period of accumulation, there's a period of growing, and now the growth has happened. And of course, there'll be further growth, but there's a lot of this, the entire HNI, UHNI population, the family offices have a dedicated pool of capital for philanthropic giving. And thus it is becoming extremely important to cater to some of these clients and be a catalyst to make them give to the society in the right manner and to the right organizations. So Megha, you brought out the point about the panel discussion. Just as a piece of information, I'm sure you would have read it, but one of the participants of that panel discussion contributed to almost 425 crores to the Indian Institute of Science. So I'm not saying it happened because of us, but I'm just saying that it does create a lot of impact, some of these sessions which we do for our clients, and it was a big giving. So you asked me one more question, that what are the solutions which people ask? And before I get to that question, I think I'll just spend 2 minutes on, so when we meet these clients in our roles as a multifamily office or as estate planners for these clients, we come across situations that many families, many patriarchs want to give more than 50% of their wealth to philanthropy. Okay, the next generation is, I'm not going to quote any numbers because it's not going to be relevant, but the next generation also are very, very keen to probably follow the dreams of the patriarch. Okay. They want to dedicate that capital. They are trying to create foundations. They're trying to also ensure that they find good organizations, because it's not easy. The biggest problem which comes up is, how do I perpetuate my organization? Okay, today the patriarch is interested. The children may or may not be interested, or maybe okay for the patriarch to follow it, but may not be necessarily involved in the organization. So how do I perpetuate? Okay. We have come across situations clients who you have also met, who have given up their working careers, who've been CEOs of organizations and started a foundation and has grown them so big. But the question always remains, how will I take them forward? So I come to the next point. A lot of questions which come to us when we kind of recommend or we kind of project organizations to our clients is, what is the scalability? What is the continuity model which they will follow? Okay, and that becomes extremely important, because if somebody is committing tons of money to this organization, the scalability, the ability to use this corpus and the perpetuity of this corpus also becomes critical. Another issue which we come across, and it's not an issue, but people are changing their mindsets. Most of the giving happened towards education and healthcare, and this is exactly what Ashish said. But I think there's lots more, and people are thinking on these directions, but they need really good, scalable, process-driven, structured organizations for them to be comfortable to give to these organizations. Okay, so when you look at some of these situations, how does the NGO build up the scalability? How do they give the trust? So there is a trust factor, but I think there's a lot more which NGOs can do, because if we go by what Ashish is saying, that the US HNIs and UHNIs are going to give a lot to the Indian community, and the Indian HNIs and UHNIs are also going to give, you need good organizations. And scalability will be important, management will be important, processes will be important. And I think Dasra also helps some of these organizations to reach to these levels. And you see, there's a lot to get there. It's not up there for every organization. So I think these are some of the concerns which we see. And we are trying to help organizations with people like yourselves to scale as well, and ensure that there's a comfort which is built up with the donors.
Yeah. No, thanks, Gautami, for bringing a good point around. There's also not just about supply of money, but also absorption capacity needs to be taken care of, and how important then that is for the nonprofit organizations to really think about their capacity building. But thanks so much, Gautami, for quick joining and sharing your perspective. I'm going to invite Vivek back.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gautami. Vivek, I hope, yeah, there you are. Vivek, over to you, and you were sharing about where Deshpande Foundation is today.
So I think we realize three most important things: overarching goal. So once you set up overarching goal, then we realize that this has to actually happen by R&D, right? You have to have a stage 1, stage 2, and finally scale. So we moved from actually kind of a first stage was, and we defined, it was all happening basically kind of a more intuitively. But after that intervention with Dasra, I think we started looking at phase 1 is we have to kind of, does this idea actually make sense? Does it make an impact, first of all? Which is kind of acceptable to the customers, and which are our kind of beneficiaries, we can call it, but we call it customer now. Then once that goes to that second stage, we figure out whether the cost, impact, execution quality, is it sustainable and kind of for a scale that we are looking at. If you're solving the problem of India, then what are the numbers you're talking? Can you at least impact 1%? I think those thoughts start coming in. So if you're studying problem of North Karnataka, can we at least impact 1% with that model that we have, the process we have, and then modify that, kind of keep R&D till we are able to say that, yes, this is sustainable from funding, costing, impact, and quality point of view. Then you come to the production phase, where basically we will not still have all money funding taken care of. So the Deshpande Foundations had changed our thought process. We started with grant making organization, from there to implementation. And today we are saying basically, can we call ourselves as a kind of a social enterprise, which will actually give impact as a service? And I'll give you explanation of what we are trying to say that way. So everybody asks a question now, what is this rural transformation means? So I think rural transformation is 4 steps, right? Health, hygiene, water, nutrition, prosperity improvement, and good governance. But we said, what is Deshpande Foundation strong at? And we focus on that. And other areas, we work with other partners. So we realized that we are strong at increasing prosperity. So we said, we'll focus on prosperity. But still people would ask, hey, what is that Deshpande Foundation's prosperity improvement mean? What is that? So we said, this is a step towards rural transformation. And we coined the acronym for STEP, just for us and everybody else to remember. And we said STEP, yes, is basically anything that is sustainable in terms of funding and impact for the scale we are looking at. Then only make it go towards scaling. Otherwise, keep iterating and keep doing kind of iterations and R&D. What does it mean? For that, we need to have funders. We have the family fund from Guraj Deshpande and Jashri Deshpande. So we get R&D fund for the phase 1, phase 2 to some extent, but phase 3 requires a huge fund. We need to have philanthropy organizations, CSRs, not just looking at scale, but also looking at, they can give the risk fund, risk capital required for this project to actually scale. And it should be long-term commitment. It cannot be just 1 year and 1 year. Then you cannot make kind of a good investment in R&D. So we said, okay, S is for that, T is for what? So we said technology which actually creates impact on the ground in terms of increased income. We'll take that technology to enable the scale, not technology for the sake of technology. So T for that. E is the most important for this. Is called E is for entrepreneurial approach. So question will be, what is that entrepreneurial approach means to us? So first we said, entrepreneurial approach first is cost sharing and demand driven. So we'll not do any program unless it is kind of cost sharing is coming from our customer. Our customers are farmers, students, micro entrepreneurs, and if they don't share the cost, that is not going to be sustainable at the scale that we want to do to make an impact to India in rural transformation. Demand driven means we don't want to sell the product. We want this farmers to look at the other impact in other farmers and demand that I want to have this program in my field, my village. That's a demand driven. And second is, we'll not create capacity for micro entrepreneurs or in employability of our students without looking at demand in the market. So look at the market in demand, and from there we build the capacity, not capacity first and then look for where we can sell it. First, look at the demand. Second aspect is, what do we deliver in the ground, in the field? Last mile, we need service and product delivery. We said we'll do through the micro entrepreneurs, which actually enables wealth creation, sustenance for long term, and also kind of a scalable. We can't do through our employees. Otherwise, its numbers will scale and organization will become too big to handle down the line. Third, we said basically startups. That is one of our 4 pillars of Deshpande Foundation Mass. Startups who are solving rural problems. Can you bring them and connect to the rural India? Because they are solving the problem. But the biggest problem is they cannot sustain for immediately till the scale is reached. Capital created, investment created, so that we can actually make ecosystem sustainable for startups. So even after Deshpande Foundation has exited down the line, the startups have scaled to the level that they can solve the problems and they're sustainable because they achieve the scales. And last P is for product and partnership mindset. And we really want to look at partners who can solve the problem of health hygiene and sanitary water and nutrition, everything at the once we are ready. But product mindset basically means look at every solution and productize it. I think multiple people have been talking about, Megha has talked about this product driving, right? So unless we productize it, we cannot actually go to scale and go across India. And productization means actually making this product solution cheaper, faster, and better every year. That's where R&D requires. I think so. Now we'll ask this question: what is the example of that? And I would like to share that example, how we have used it on. So farm pond, we are doing actually farm pond, 6,000 farm pond we had done before I joined foundation. A cost of maybe we started with full funding from the farmer for first year. Then actually over time we went to 25,000 from the Deshpande Foundation as a machine, and around 55,000 coming from the farmers in terms of diesel, driver cost, and inlet outlet and all that. But 25,000, and we said we want to scale it to millions for India. For North Karnataka, can we do 6,000 in 8 years we are done? In next 5 years, to achieve that goal, what should be our goal? Instead of looking at every year increasing by 1,000 to 1,500 to 2,000, that will take lives for us to kind of solve India's problem or enable that. So can we look at next 5 years? And I think the triggering from Dasra was very good, but that initially, so that we're thinking from that perspective. So we said 1 lakh farm ponds we have to do. That means 250 crore required. Now 250 crore is not possible in 5 years to get that. Yes? So how do you do that? So then we looked at basically, can we productize this model as up to the farmers and say, can they pay all the money? It was a very interesting discussion with farmers. They were taking loans for 55,000 also at a 36% interest from lenders. But we said, can you get loan from the bank? Will you be able to take 60,000 loan, 20,000 from your pocket, 60,000 for your loan, so 80,000 rupees whole farm pond? Can you do that? They said, no problem. We had 5,000 people lined up there. Then we talked to the SBI and NABARD. And they said, okay, how can we enable the loan without the security?
I think we've again lost Vivek, but
free range compound should be, and it impacts actually kind of multiple times. I think time is over, so I'll kind of finish in that. So now we have done 5,000 farm. Last year kind of we started this model. This year we're doing 5,000 farm ponds with 80,000 coming from farmers, and impact is actually kind of a 2x income for them because they do minimum one crop, they go to two crops, and then some of them go to horticulture, vegetables to go 8 to 10 times income. And this is what we are looking at basically. How do we can kind of now get this farm pond as an impact as a service with satellite picture imaging, MIML to find the farm position, mobile application to ensure that before, during, and after farm pond, everything goes smoothly.
Yeah.
And with that,
Vivek, how do the farmers repay the loan?
Yeah. So what happens, right? Generally in the rain-fed area, they generally do one crop because they don't have the water in the other season. As soon as the farm pond comes in, they actually do minimum two crops or 2.5 crops, short crop actually, and then do something like horticulture. Immediately the income goes more than double at 2 times.
Yeah.
And that basically they are paying back. And our main goal is to that every farmer should pay back. And we are actually already 21% farmers have paid back the loan. And remaining are actually paying every month. We are seeing the money going back to the SBI. And SBI is willing to do not just 5,000. They're looking at 1 lakh farm pond to be supported in the next 4 years.
That's fantastic, Vivek. Thank you so much. And I think the example really made it come to life to truly create a model where there is dignity and equity for the farmers as well. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing your model, and wish you best luck. And we'll see you around. On that note, I'm going to now on that note, I'm going to invite Deval. Deval, you've been around in the sector for 22 years or maybe more. And I know apart from being a co-founder to Dasra, you also multi-hat many roles in the sector. I think my big question to you is catalytic philanthropy still relevant, especially after you hear everything that the speakers have said this evening? What's your reflection?
Thank you, Megha. And clearly I look like I've been doing this for 22 years as well. I just want to first of all thank all of the speakers and more importantly, not just for, of course, participating in today's panel, but really for all of the impact that they've created over the years. And as Dasra, we've been so lucky to work with each and every one of you in different forms and in different capacities. And to your point, Megha, while these are exemplary cases on what can be done on the giving side, on the receiving side, and on the impact side overall, we're pretty bad shape as a country. Let's be honest and open, right? Before 2 years ago, we thought that by 2030 we'll be a middle-income country. We saw the divide sort of decreasing. But COVID has really thrown everything into a toss. And while you and I and everyone on this call are able to safely do these calls on Zoom like we have for the last couple of years, I think the majority of our citizens in India have not had that privilege and opportunity. And so whether it was 3% of children attending schools in rural India over the last couple of years because they didn't have access to devices, whether it's the over 200 million individuals who slipped back into extreme poverty due to COVID, or the 500,000 deaths that have occurred, we have a long way to go to sort of bridge the divide. And if anything, the divide has increased in the last 2 years. And so to your specific question, can catalytic philanthropy still play a role? 100%. In fact, I think all of us need to question what can we do more to really ensure that the pain and suffering that so many, again, of our brothers and sisters have gone through needs to end. And we have a responsible role to play, given the privilege we've been able to have in keeping ourselves and our families safe in the spirit, to do more, to act more vigorously, and to be more catalytic. I think the time is now more than ever for us to join hands and look at all populations and enable them to grow in a manner that they need support. And I think that's why we are very, very relevant. And if anything, we need 1,000 more organizations to bloom.
Deval, what would you like to say, just a couple of your high level reflections? What more do the funders need? And I'm pushing you to be more specific. What more do the funders need to do? 3 things or 2 things and what do the NGO leaders need to do, and what do ecosystem builders need to do? Just one or two things, top level.
No, of course. And again, I just want to sort of reiterate, even for Dasra and our journey has been with many of the people here, right? And not just the people who've spoken, but I saw, Amit Chandra is in this session, and he actually helped us incubate this entire sort of idea on how to be more catalytic and how to be more sort of thought-provoking and how to sort of push the envelope. And he's been an exemplar in that. And really, in that lens for philanthropists, we need, again, another 1,000 Amit Chandras to bloom. Archana may think differently, Amit, but I think from what you and your family have been able to do, it's just been amazing, right? And so I think from a giver perspective, it is about, funding capacity building, making long-term bets, trusting the communities that you serve. These are all things that are really, really critical. And I think while many people in the country are really focusing on accelerating India philanthropy, and I think that's really important, I think the issue though is, are we meeting the most marginalized communities? Are we thinking about where the money needs to go? And are we trusting the communities to actually make decisions versus us just looking at the deployment of capital? There's no question, there's many areas that India needs support, but honestly speaking, do we need more universities that cater to the upper class? Or do we need actually groups like the ones you've heard today, whether it's Lend a Hand India or other NGOs that you've heard for the last week through this forum that need support? And Ashish, said it the best, it's the small and medium-sized organizations that need more support. And those are the ones, honestly, that are not getting funding. And so how do sort of philanthropists on this call and givers overall sort of trust those organizations, not just those that have already achieved scale, but those who are yet to achieve scale, and provide them the support, not just financially, but from a capacity building perspective, to build that solid foundation, to grow and really become the next leaders of our country. And I don't think we've done a great job in the sector doing that, and givers definitely haven't. And honestly speaking, in the last 2 years, it's only gotten worse, not better.
Thank you, Deval. Any last parting comments from you, Deval?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is amazing to me that business leaders, and I say this because they're the ones who have had the ability to acquire wealth, that they take risks and ambition on one hand with their business and realize they don't have all the answers. They're entrepreneurs. They'll work day and night to fix whatever they solution or problem, that they have in front of them, but they don't give that same level of trust and respect to NGO leaders. And I think that is really, really required. I mean, when I moved to India 22 years ago, growing up in Houston, Texas, at least, I was very lucky to be exposed to Pratham at the time, since they were doing quite a bit of fundraising. Perhaps one of the first NGOs in India to do fundraising in the country was in Houston. And my vision, again, back then at least, was while there was one Pratham and they were doing great work in education, we need another 100 organizations focusing on other activities, like Gautami said. And I think as Dasra, we've been so lucky to work with groups like Industry and Ungin and Lahi and others that have created that sort of mark. But I think now we need to be really a little bit more ambitious and say, okay, how do we get from 100 NGOs that are sort of above a 10 crore sort of level to 1,000 organizations? And from the giving list, honestly, how do we get from 3 to 5 Indians who've committed 50% of their wealth to thousands of Indians to do that? And as the Bain report said earlier this week that we launched, the Indian Philanthropy report, it just shows giving, if anything, has remained constant, if not declined, amongst high net worth individuals. And that needs to change. And it, honestly, no offense to anyone who was giving khichdi when the migrants were walking home and who have sponsored plane tickets and bus tickets, but these issues were there well before COVID. And we have to look at the structural issues that we all, including myself, have allowed to happen. The fact that we live in a society that we still allow people to live in slums without access to education or toilets or running water is shocking. And we need to start questioning these norms. In fact, Rhea Forbes's grandfather was saying that he remembers years ago that slums were accepted. And the question is why? Why are slums accepted? Why do we allow 50% of our population to live a certain way and we all live another way? I think we need to start questioning this. We need to start thinking about the fabric of our society, and we need to start giving back. And the question is not, have I received my first million or billion rupees and then I'll give, but do I have more than people around me? And if the answer is yes, what can I do to change that? And I think that level of urgency, that level of dedication, and that level of sort of commitment is required by far more people than we see today to at least just level the playing field and enable people to survive, much less thrive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much, Deval, for that trigger. And I hope that that trigger and that question stays with all of us when we wake up tomorrow morning and get back to life. On that note, I would love to thank all my trailblazers and my audience for your engaged listening, for your deep listening, for your sincere listening. Before we end, may I please request you to participate in a short feedback. It won't take more than 30 seconds, just so we know that what should we do better and what can we bring, what conversations can we bring in our next forum. Please do tune in to our last session, last but not the least, Around the World in Intersectional Ways, Exploring Layers in Practice, that starts at 8:30 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone.